Psalm 73, Part 3 of Expositions on the Book of Psalms by St. Augustine of Hippo. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Expositions on the Book of Psalms by St. Augustine of Hippo. Psalm 73, Part 3. Read by David Ronald. Verse 15. If I said, I will declare this, that is, I will teach thus, how wilt thou teach? That there is no knowledge in the Most High, that God doth not know? Wilt thou propound this opinion, that without cause men live justly, and do live justly, that a just man hath lost his service, because God doth more shew favour to evil men, or else he doth care for no one? Wilt thou tell this, declare this? He doth restrain himself by an authority repressing him. What authority? A man wisheth sometime to break out in this sentiment, but he is recalled by the Scriptures, directing us alway to live well, saying that God doth care for things human, that he maketh a distinction between a godly man and an ungodly man. Therefore, this man also, wishing to put forth this sentiment, doth recollect himself. And what saith he? If I said, I shall declare thus, behold, the generation of thy sons I have reprobated. I have reprobated the generation of thy sons. If I shall declare thus, the generation of just men I shall reprobate. As also some copies have it, behold the generation of thy sons, with which I have been in concert. That is, with which consisting of thy sons I have been in concert. That is, with which I have agreed, to which I have been conformed. I have been out of time with all, if so I teach. For he doth sing in concert who giveth the tune together, but he that giveth not the tune together doth not sing in concert. Am I to say something different from that which Abraham said, from that which Isaac said, from that which Jacob said, from that which the prophets said? For all they said that God doth care for things human, am I to say that he careth not? Is there greater wisdom in me than in them? Greater understanding in me than in them? A most wholesome authority hath called back his thought from ungodliness. And what followeth? If I said it, I shall declare thus, behold, the generation of thy children I have reprobated. Therefore, that he might not reprobate, he did what? Verse 16. And I undertook to know. May God be with him in order that he may know. Meanwhile, brethren, from a great fall he is being withheld, when he doth not presume that he already knoweth, but hath undertaken to know that which he knew not. For but now he was willing to appear as if knowing, and to declare that God hath no care of human things. For this hath come to be a most naughty and ungodly doctrine of unrighteous men. Know, brethren, that many men dispute, and say that God careth not for things human, that by chances all things are ruled, or that our wills have been made subject to the stars, that each one is not dealt with according to his deserts, but by the necessity of his stars, an evil doctrine, an impious doctrine. Unto those thoughts was going that man whose feet were almost moved, and whose steps were all but overthrown. Into this error he was going. But because he was not in tune with the generation of the sons of God, he undertook to know, and condemned the knowledge wherein with God's just men he agreed not. And what he saith let us hear, how that he undertook to know, and was helped, and learned something, and declared it to us. And I undertook, he saith, to know, and this labour is before me. Truly a great labour, to know in what manner both God doth care for things human, and it is well with evil men, and good men labour. Great is the importance of the question, therefore, and this labour is before me. As it were, there is standing in my face a sort of wall, but thou hast the voice of a psalm. In my God I shall pass over the wall, this labour is before me. Sooth thou sayest, labour is before thee. Before God it is no labour. Put thyself before God, where there is no labour, and not even to thee will there be labour. And he hath done this, for he saith how long labour is before him. Verse 17. Until I enter into the sanctuary of God, and understand upon the last things. A great thing it is, brethren, now for a long time I labor, he saith, and before my face I see a sort of insuperable labor, to know in what manner both God is just, and doth care for things human, and is not unjust, because men sinning and doing wicked actions have happiness on this earth, but the godly and men serving God are wasted oft times in trials and in labors. A great difficulty it is to know this, but only until I enter into the sanctuary of God. For in this sanctuary what is presented to thee, in order that thou mayest solve this question. And I understand, he saith, upon the last things, not present things. I, he saith, from the sanctuary of God, stretch out mine eye unto the end, I pass over present things. All that which is called the human race, all that mass of mortality is to come to the balance, is to come to the scale. Thereon will be weighed the works of men. All things now a cloud doth enfold, but to God are known the merits of each severally. And I understand, he saith, upon the last things, but not of myself, for before me there is labor. Whence may I understand upon the last things? Let me enter into the sanctuary of God. In that place then he understood also the reason why these men now are happy. Verse 18, to wit, because of deceitfulness thou hast set upon them. Because deceitful they are, that is fraudulent. Because deceitful they are, they suffer deceits. What is this? Because fraudulent they are, they suffer a fraud. They desire to play a fraud upon mankind in all their naughtiness. They themselves also suffer a fraud, in choosing earthly good things, and in forsaking the eternal. Therefore, brethren, in their very playing off a fraud, they suffer a fraud. In that which but now I said, brethren, what manner of wit hath he who to gain a garment doth lose his fidelity? Hath he, whose garment he hath taken, suffered a fraud, or he that is smitten with so great a loss? If a garment is more precious than fidelity, the former doth suffer the greater loss. But if incomparably good faith doth surpass the whole world, the latter shall seem to have sustained the loss of a garment, but to the former is said, what doth it profit a man if he gain the whole world, but suffer the loss of his own soul? Therefore, what hath befallen them? Because of deceitfulness thou hast set for them. Thou didst throw them down while they were being exalted. He hath not said, thou didst throw them down because they were lifted up. Not as it were after that they were lifted up, thou didst throw them down, but in their very lifting up they were thrown down. For thus to be lifted up is already to fall. Thou didst throw them down while they were being lifted up. Verse 19. How have they become a desolation suddenly? He is wondering at them, understanding unto the last things. They have vanished, truly like smoke, which while it mounteth upward doth vanish, so they have vanished. How doth he say, they have vanished? In the manner of one who understandeth the last things. They have vanished, they have perished because of their iniquity. Verse 20. Like as the dream of one rising up. How have they vanished? As vanisheth the dream of one rising up. Fancy a man in sleep to have seen himself find treasures. He is a rich man, but only until he awaketh. Like as the dream of one rising up, so they have vanished, like the dream of one awakening. It is sought then, and it is not. There is nothing in the hands, nothing in the bed. A poor man, he went to sleep. A rich man in sleep he became. Had he not awoke, he were a rich man. He woke up. He found the care which he had lost while sleeping. And these men shall find the misery which they had prepared for themselves. When they shall have awoke from this life, that thing doth pass away which was grasped as if in sleep, like as the dream of one rising up. And that there might not be said, what then? A small thing doth their glory seem to thee, a small thing doth their state seem to thee, small things seem to thee inscriptions, images, statues, distinctions, troops of clients. O Lord, he saith, in thy city their image thou shalt bring to nothing. Therefore, my brethren, speaking freely of this passage, or whence it is allowed me, for when we mingle with you, we do rather smite you than teach you, in the name of Christ and in the fear of him, I exhort you, that whosoever of you have not these things should not covet them. Whosoever of you have them should not rely on them. Behold, I have told you, I say not, ye are condemned because ye have them, but ye are condemned if on such things ye rely. If because of such things ye are puffed up, if because of such things ye think yourselves to be great men, if because of such things ye acknowledge not the poor, if because of your excelling in this emptiness ye forget the common lot of mankind, for then God must needs make retribution at the last, and in his city bring to nothing the image of such men. For he that is rich, let him be so in the way that the apostle hath enjoined. Charge, he saith, the rich men of this world not to think proudly, nor to hope in the uncertainty of their riches, but in the living God, who bestoweth upon us all things abundantly to enjoy. He hath taken away the pride of rich men, he giveth counsel, as if they were saying, We are rich men, thou dost forbid us to be proud, dost prohibit us from boasting of the parade of our riches. What then are we to do with these riches? Is it come to this, that there is nothing which they may do therewith? Be they rich, he saith, in good works, let them readily distribute, communicate. And what doth this profit? Let them treasure unto themselves a good foundation for the future, that they may lay hold of true life. Where ought they to lay up treasure for themselves? In that place whereunto he set his eye, when entering the sanctuary of God. Let there shudder all our rich brethren, abounding in money, gold, silver, household, honors. Let them shudder at that which but now hath been said, O Lord, in thy city thou shalt bring to nothing their image. Are they not worthy to suffer these things, to wit, that God bring to nothing their image in his city, because also they have themselves brought to nothing the image of God in their earthly city? In thy city thou shalt bring to nothing their image. Verse 21. Because my heart was delighted. He is saying with what things he is tempted. Because my heart was delighted, he saith, my reins also were changed. When those temporal things delighted me, my reins were changed. It may also be understood thus, because my heart was delighted in God, my reins were also changed. That is, my lusts were changed, and I became wholly chaste. My reins were changed, and hear how. Verse 22. And I was brought unto nothing, and I knew not. I, the very man, who now say these things of rich men, once longed for such things. Therefore even I was brought to nothing, when my steps were almost overthrown, and I was brought unto nothing, and I knew not. We must not therefore despair even of them against whom I was saying such things. What is, I knew not? As it were a beast I became to thee. Verse 23. And I am alway with thee. There is a great difference between this man and others. He became, as it were, a beast in longing for earthly things. When being brought to nothing, he knew not things eternal, but he departed not from his God, because he did not desire these things of demons, of the devil. For this I have already brought to your notice. The voices from the synagogue, that is, from that people which serve not idols. A beast indeed I became, when desiring from my God things earthly, but I never departed from that my God. Because then, though having become a beast, I departed not from my God, there followeth, Thou hast held the hand of my right hand. He hath not said, my right hand, but the hand of my right hand. If the hand of the right hand it is, a hand hath a hand. The hand thou hast held of my right hand, in order that thou mightest conduct me. For what hath he put hand? For power. For we say that a man hath that in his hand which he hath in his power, just as the devil said to God concerning Job, Lay to thine hand, and take away the things which he hath. What is, lay to thine hand? Put forth power. The hand of God he hath called the power of God. As hath been written in another place, Death and life are in the hands of the tongue. Hath the tongue hands? But what is in the hands of the tongue? In the power of the tongue. What is in the power of the tongue? Out of thy mouth thou shalt be justified, and out of thy mouth thou shalt be condemned. Thou hast held, therefore, the hand of my right hand, the power of my right hand. What was my right hand? I was always with thee. Unto the left I was holding, because I became a beast, that is, because there was an earthly concupiscence in me, but the right was mine, because I was alway with thee. Of this my right hand thou hast held the hand, that is, hast directed the power. What power? He gave them power to become sons of God. He is beginning now to be among the sons of God, belonging to the New Testament. See in what manner the hand of his right hand was held. In thy will thou hast conducted me. What is in thy will? Not in my merits. What is in thy will? Hear the apostle, who was at first a beast, longing for things earthly, and living after the Old Testament. He saith what? I that at first was a blasphemer, and persecutor, and injurious, but mercy I obtained. What is in thy will? By the grace of God I am what I am, and in glory thou hast taken me up. Now to what glory he was taken up, and in what glory, who can explain, who can say? Let us await it, because in the resurrection it will be, in the last things it will be, with glory thou hast taken me up. And he is beginning to think of that same heavenly felicity, and to reprove himself, because he hath been a beast, and hath longed for things earthly. Verse 25. For what have I in heaven, and from thee what have I willed upon earth? By your voice I see that ye have understood. He compared with his earthly will the heavenly reward which he is to receive. He saw that was there, being reserved for him, and while thinking and burning at the thought of some ineffable thing, which neither eye hath seen, nor ear heard, nor into the heart of man hath ascended, he hath not said this or that I have in heaven, but, what have I in heaven? What is that thing which I have in heaven? What is it? How great is it? Of what sort is it? And since that which I have in heaven doth not pass away, from thee what have I willed upon earth? Thou reservest for me, I will speak as I am able, but forgive me, accept my endeavor, mine earnestness to attempt, for to explain it I have not power. Thou reservest, he saith, for me in heaven riches immortal, even thyself, and I have willed from thee on earth that which even ungodly men have, which even evil men have, which even abandoned men have, money, gold, silver, jewels, households, which even many wicked men have, which even many profligate women have, many profligate men. These things, as a great matter, I have desired of my God upon earth, though my God reserveth himself for me in heaven. For what have I in heaven? He hath to display that very what, and from thee what have I willed upon earth? Verse 26. My heart and my flesh hath failed, O God of my heart. This then for me in heaven hath been reserved, God of my heart, and my portion is my God. What is it, brethren? Let us find out our riches. Let mankind choose their parts. Let us see men torn with diversity of desires. Let some choose war service, some advocacy, some divers and sundry offices of teaching, some merchandise, some farming. Let them take their portions in human affairs. Let the people of God cry, My portion is my God. Not for a time, my portion, but my portion is my God for everlasting. Even if I alway have gold, what have I? Even if I did not alway have God, how great a good should I have? To this is added, that he promiseth himself to me, and he promiseth that I shall have this for everlasting. So great a thing I have, and never have it not. Great felicity. My portion is God. How long? For everlasting. For behold, and see after what sort he hath loved him. He hath made his heart chaste. God of my heart, and my portion is God for everlasting. His heart hath become chaste, for naught now God is loved. From him is not sought any other reward. He that doth seek any other reward from God, and therefore is willing to serve God, more precious doth make that which he willeth to receive, than him from whom he willeth to receive. What then? Is there no reward belonging to God? None except himself. The reward belonging to God is God himself. This he loveth, this he esteemeth. If any other thing he shall have loved, the love will not be chaste. Thou art receding from the fire immortal. Thou wilt grow cold, wilt be corrupted. Do not recede, recede not. It will be thy corruption, it will be thy fornication. Now he is returning, now he is repenting, now he is choosing repentance. Now he is saying, My portion is God. And after what sort is he delighted with that same whom he hath chosen for his portion? Verse 27. Behold, they that put themselves afar from thee shall perish. He therefore departed from God, but not far. For I have become as it were a beast, he saith, and I am alway with thee. But they have departed afar, because not only things earthly they have desired, but have sought them from demons and the devil. They that put themselves afar from thee shall perish. And what is it? To become afar from God. Thou hast destroyed every man that committeth fornication away from thee. To this fornication is opposed chaste love. What is chaste love? Now the soul doth love her bridegroom. What doth she require of him? From her bridegroom whom she loveth. Perchance, in like manner, as women choose for themselves men, either as sons-in-law or as bridegrooms, she perchance chooseth riches, and loveth his gold, and estates, and silver, and cattle, and horses, and household, and the like. Far be it, he doth love him alone, for not he doth love him, because in him he hath all things, for by him were made all things. Thou hast destroyed, he saith, every one that committeth fornication away from thee. Verse 28. But thou doest what? But for me to cleave to God is a good thing. This is whole good. Will ye have more? I grieve at your willing. Brethren, what will ye have more? Than to cleave to God, nothing is better, when we shall see him face to face. But now what? For yet as a stranger I am speaking. To cleave, he saith, to God is a good thing. Now for my sojourning, for not yet hath come the substance, I have to put in God my hope. So long therefore as thou hast not yet cloven, therein put thy hope. Thou art wavering, cast forward an anchor to the land. Not yet dost thou cleave by presence, cleave fast by hope. To put in God my hope. And by doing what here wilt thou put in God thy hope. What will be thy business but to praise him whom thou lovest, and to make others to be fellow lovers of him with thee? Lo, if thou shouldest love a charioteer, wouldest thou not carry along other men to love him with thee? A lover of a charioteer, whithersoever he goeth, doth speak of him, in order that, as well as he, others also may love him. For not are loved abandoned men, and from God is reward required, in order that he may be loved. Love thou God for naught, grudge God to no one, seize him as many as ye are able, as many as shall possess. He is not made straight, ye will make no limits in him. Him wholly each of you will possess, and him wholly all ye will have. Therefore this do while here thou art, that is, while thou art putting thy hope in God. For what followeth? In order that I may tell forth all thy praises in the courts of the daughter of Sion. In order that I may tell forth all thy praises. But where? In the courts of the daughter of Sion. For the preaching of God beside the church is vain. A small thing it is to praise God, and to tell forth all his praise. In the courts of the daughter of Sion tell thou forth. Make for unity, do not divide the people, but draw them unto one, and make them one. I have forgotten how long I have been speaking. Now the psalm being ended, even judging by this closeness, I suppose I have held a long discourse, but it doth not suffice for your zeal. Ye are too impetuous. O that with this impetuosity ye would seize upon the kingdom of heaven. End of Psalm 73, Part 3. Psalm 74, Part 1 of Expositions on the Book of Psalms, Volume 3. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. LibriVox.org. Expositions on the Book of Psalms, Volume 3, Psalm 74, Part 1. Exposition, Sermon to the People. This psalm's title is Of the Understanding of Asaph. Asaph, in Latin, is translated congregation, in Greek, synagogue. Let us see what this synagogue hath understood. But let us understand firstly synagogue. From thence we shall understand what the synagogue hath understood. Every congregation is spoken of under the general name of synagogue. One both of beasts and of men may be called a congregation. But here there is no congregation of beasts when we heard understanding. For when a man, being in honor, hath neglected in himself his understanding, hear what hath been said concerning him. A man being in honor is compared to beasts without sense, and is become like unto them. That then it is no congregation of beasts, we must neither for a long time discuss, nor more diligently notice. But because it is a congregation of men, of what men this is, we ought to understand. It is not indeed of those men who, being in honor and not understanding, are compared to the beasts without sense, and have become like unto them, but of those that do understand. For this the psalm's title doth prescribe, saying, Of the understanding of Asaph. It is therefore a certain understanding congregation whereof we are about to hear the voice. But since properly synagogue is said of the congregation of the people of Israel, so that wheresoever we may have heard synagogue, we are no longer wont to understand any but the people of the Jews, let us see whether perchance the voice in this psalm be not of that same people. But of what sort of Jews, and of what sort of people of Israel? For they are not of the chaff, but perchance of the grain, not of the broken branches, but perchance of those that are strengthened. For not all that are of Israel are Israelites, but in Isaac he saith, There shall be called for thee a seed, that is, not they that are sons of the flesh are the sons of God, but the sons of promise are counted for a seed. There are therefore certain Israelites of whom was he concerning whom was said, Behold, an Israelite indeed, in whom guile is not. I do not say in the same manner as we are Israelites, for we also are the seed of Abraham. For to the Gentiles the apostle was speaking, when he said, Therefore the seed of Abraham ye are, heirs according to promise. According to this, therefore, all we are Israelites that follow the footsteps of the faith of our father Abraham. But let us understand here the voice of the Israelites in the same manner as the apostle saith, For I also am an Israelite of the seed of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin. Here therefore let us understand that whereof the prophets have spoken, a remnant shall be saved. Of the remnant, therefore, saved, let us hear in this place the voice, in order that there may speak that synagogue which had received the Old Testament and was intent upon carnal promises, and by this means it came to pass that their feet were shaken. For in another psalm, whereto the title hath Asaph, there is said what? How good is the God of Israel to men right in heart, but my feet were almost moved. And as if we were saying, Whence were thy feet moved? Well nigh, he saith, my steps were overthrown, because I was jealous in the case of sinners, looking on the peace of sinners. For while, according to the promises of God belonging to the Old Testament, he was looking for earthly felicity, he observed it to abound with ungodly men, that they who worshipped not God were enriched with those things which he was looking for from God, and as though, without cause, he had served God, his feet tottered. For in that place he is saying, Behold, sinners themselves have gotten even abundant riches in the world. Have I not in vain justified my heart? See in what manner his steps have been well nigh overthrown, so that now the soul saith to herself, What profit is it that I serve God? Behold, that man serveth not, and is happy. I serve, and I toil. Lastly, suppose that I am happy. Seeing that he also is happy that serveth not, why should I think myself happy because I serve? But that psalm whereof I have brought forward the testimony precedes that which now we have in hand. But opportunity it hath chanced, not by our own, but by God's dispensation, that just now we heard out of the gospel that the law was given by Moses, grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. For if we distinguish between the two testaments, old and new, there are not the same sacraments, nor the same promises, nevertheless the same commandments for the most part. For, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, honor father and mother, thou shalt not bear false witness, thou shalt not covet the property of thy neighbor, thou shalt not covet the wife of thy neighbor. To us too hath been commanded, and whosoever shall not have kept those doth go astray, and is by no means worthy to receive the holy mountain of God, concerning which hath been said, Who shall dwell in thy tabernacle, or who shall rest upon thy holy mountain? The innocent in hands and of a pure heart. The commandments, therefore, when examined, are either all found to be the same, or there are scarce any in the gospel which have not been spoken by the prophets. The commandments are the same, the sacraments are not the same, the promises are not the same. Let us see wherefore the commandments are the same, because according to these we ought to serve God. The sacraments are not the same, for the sacraments there are giving salvation, others promising a Savior. The sacraments of the New Testament give salvation, the sacraments of the Old Testament did promise a Savior. When therefore thou hast now the things promised, why dost thou seek the things promising, having now the Savior? I say, thou hast the things promised, not because we have already received life eternal, but because Christ hath now come, who was foretold by the prophets. The sacraments have been changed, have been made more easy, of fewer number, more saving, more blessed. Why are the promises not the same? Because there was promised the land of Chanaan, a land plentiful, fruitful, flowing with milk and honey. There was promised a kingdom temporal. There was promised the felicity of the world. There was promised fruitfulness of children. There was promised the subduing of enemies. All these things to earthly felicity do belong. But why should these things first have been promised? Because not first is that which is spiritual, but that which is natural. Afterward, he saith, that which is spiritual. The first man was of earth, earthly. The second man was from heaven, heavenly. Such as is the earthly man, such are also earthly men, and such as is the heavenly man, such are also the heavenly men. As we have borne the image of the earthly man, let us bear also the image of him who is from heaven. To the image of the earthly man doth belong the Old Testament, to the image of the heavenly man the New Testament. But that no one might suppose that by one was made the earthly man, by another the heavenly. Therefore, God shewing himself to be the creator of both, even of both testaments, willed himself to be the author, in order that both things earthly he might promise in the Old Testament, and things heavenly in the New Testament. But how long art thou at first an earthly man? How long dost thou mind things earthly? When to a boy are given some boyish playthings, wherewith his boyish mind may be amused, are they not taken out of his hands when he groweth up, in order that he may now take in hand something more useful, which becometh a grown person? For example, thou didst thyself give to thy son nuts when he was little, and a book when he was bigger. By no means, therefore, because God through the New Testament hath taken out of the hands of his sons those things which are like playthings of boys, in order that he might give something more useful to them growing up. On that account must he be supposed not to have given those former things himself. He gave both himself. But the law itself through Moses was given. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. Grace, because there is fulfilled through love that which by the letter was being enjoined. Truth, because there is being rendered that which was promised. This thing, therefore, this Asaph hath understood. In a word, all things which to the Jews had been promised have been taken away. Where is their kingdom? Where the temple? Where the anointing? Where is priest? Where are now the prophets among them? From what time there came he that by the prophets was foretold? In that nation there is now nothing of these things. Now she hath lost things earthly, and not yet doth seek things heavenly. Thou shouldest not, therefore, hold fast to things earthly, although God doth bestow them. Nevertheless, because we ought not to cleave to them, we ought by no means to believe that any other doth give them but God. He doth himself give them. But do not, as a great matter, expect from him the good which he doth give even to one not good. For if as a great matter he were to give these things to evil men, he would not give them. But for this purpose he hath willed to give them to evil men also, that good men may learn to seek from him some other thing which he giveth not to evil men also. But these miserable men, cleaving to things earthly, and not relying on him who made heaven and earth, who gave to them even those very earthly things, who delivered them even temporarily from Egyptian bondage, who led them through the severed sea, who overwhelmed their pursuing enemies in the waves, not relying on him who would give indeed things heavenly to them grown up, as he gave things earthly to them when children, fearing to lose that which they had received, they slew him who had given it. These things we say, brethren, in order that ye, being men of the New Testament, may learn not to cleave to things earthly. For if they without excuse did cleave to things earthly, to whom the New Testament itself had not yet been revealed, how much more, without excuse, do they pursue things earthly, to whom now the heavenly things promised in the New Testament have been revealed? For call to mind, my brethren, what was said by them that persecuted Christ. If we shall have let him go, the Romans will come and will take from us both place and nation. See ye how that in fearing to lose things earthly, they slew the King of heaven. And what was done to them? They lost even those very things earthly, and in the place where they slew Christ, there they were slain. And when, being unwilling to lose their land, they slew the giver of life, that same land being slain they lost. And at that very time, when they slew him, in order that by that very time they might be admonished of the reason wherefore they suffered these things. For when the city of the Jews was overthrown, they were celebrating the Passover. And when many thousands of men, the whole nation itself, had met together for the celebration of that festival, in that place God, through evil men indeed, but yet himself good, through unjust men, but himself just and justly, did so take vengeance upon them, that there were slain many thousands of men, and the city itself was overthrown. Of this thing in the psalm the understanding of Asaph doth complain, and in the very plaint the understanding as it were doth distinguish things earthly from things heavenly, doth distinguish the Old Testament from the New Testament, in order that thou mayest see through what things thou art passing, what thou shouldest look for, what to forsake, to what to cleave. Thus then he beginneth, verse 1, Wherefore hast thou repelled us, O God, unto the end? Hast repelled unto the end, in the person of the congregation which is properly called synagogue. Wherefore hast thou repelled us, O God, unto the end? He censureth not, but inquireth wherefore, for what purpose, because of what hast thou done this? What hast thou done? Thou hast repelled us unto the end. What is unto the end? Perchance, even unto the end of the world. Hast thou repelled us unto Christ, who is the end to every one believing? For, wherefore hast thou repelled us, O God, unto the end? Thy Spirit hath been wroth at the sheep of thy flock. Wherefore wast thou wroth at the sheep of thy flock, but because to things earthly we were cleaving, and the shepherd we knew not. Verse 2. Remember thou thy congregation, which thou hast possessed from the beginning. Can this by any means be the voice of the Gentiles? Hath he possessed the Gentiles from the beginning? Nay, but he hath possessed the seed of Abraham, the people of Israel, even according to the flesh, born of the patriarchs our fathers, of whom we have become the sons, not by coming out of their flesh, but by imitating their faith. But those possessed by God from the beginning, what befell them? Remember thy congregation, which thou hast possessed from the beginning. Thou hast redeemed the rod of thine inheritance. That same congregation of thine, being the rod of thine inheritance, thou hast redeemed. This same congregation he hath called the rod of the inheritance. Let us look back to the first thing that was done when he willed to possess that same congregation, delivering it from Egypt, what sign he gave to Moses, when Moses said to him, What sign shall I give, that they may believe me, that thou hast sent me? And God saith to him, What dost thou bear in thine hand? A rod. Cast it on the ground. And he let fall the rod upon the ground, and it became a serpent. And Moses was afraid, and Moses fled from it. And the Lord saith to him, Take hold of the tail thereof. And he took hold, and it returned to its own shape, having become a rod, as it was a rod before. What doth it imitate? For this was not done to no purpose. Let us inquire of the writings of God. To what did the serpent persuade man? To death. Therefore, death is from the serpent. If death is from the serpent, the rod in the serpent is Christ in death. Therefore, also when by serpents in the desert they were being bitten and being slain, the Lord commanded Moses to exalt a brazen serpent in the desert, and admonish the people that whosoever by a serpent had been bitten should look thereupon and be made whole. Thus also it was done. Thus also men bitten by serpents were made whole of the venom by looking upon a serpent. To be made whole of a serpent is a great sacrament. What is it to be made whole of a serpent by looking upon a serpent? It is to be made whole of death by believing in one dead. And nevertheless Moses feared and fled. What is it that Moses fled from that serpent? What, brethren, save that which we know to have been done in the gospel? Christ died, and the disciples feared, and withdrew from that hope wherein they had been. But what was said? Take hold of the tail thereof. What is the tail? On the latter parts seize thou. This was intimated by the following also, My back parts thou shalt see. At first it became a serpent, but when the tail was grasped, it became a rod. At first he was slain, afterwards he rose again. There is also in the tail of the serpent the end of the world, for thus now the mortality of the church doth walk. Some go, others come through death, as though through the serpent, because by the serpent death was sown, but at the end of the world, as though by the tail, we go back to the hand of God, and we are made the established kingdom of God, in order that there may be fulfilled in us, Thou hast redeemed the rod of thine inheritance. But the voice is for the sake of the synagogue, but the redeemed rod of the inheritance of God is more apparent in the Gentiles, but the hope of the Jews was hidden, that is to say, either of those who are to believe hereafter, or of those who believed at that time when, at the sending of the Holy Ghost, the disciples spake with the tongues of all nations. For at that time some thousands of the Jews themselves, the crucifiers of Christ, believed, and because they had been found at hand, they so believed as that they sold all that they had, and the price of their goods before the feet of the apostles they laid. Because then this thing was hidden, and the redemption of the rod of God was to be more conspicuous in the Gentiles, he explaineth of what he saith, that which he hath said, Thou hast redeemed the rod of thine inheritance. This he hath said, not of the Gentiles in whom it was evident, but of what? Mount Sion. Yet even Mount Sion can be otherwise understood, that one which thou hast dwelled in the same. In the place where the people was aforetime, where the temple was set up, where the sacrifices were celebrated, where at that time were all those necessary things giving promise of Christ, a promise, when the thing promised is bestowed, is now become superfluous. For before that there is bestowed that which is promised, the promise itself is necessary, lest the person to whom the promise is made forget the thing promised, and through not expecting it die. He ought, therefore, to expect, in order that he may receive it when it shall have come. Therefore he ought not to neglect the promise. For this reason figures were not neglected, in order that when the day came, the shadows might be taken away. Mount Sion, that one which thou hast dwelled in the same. Verse 3. Lift up thine hand upon their pride at the end. As thou didst repel us at the end, so lift up thine hand upon the pride of them at the end. The pride of whom? Of those by whom Jerusalem was overthrown. But by whom was it, but by the kings of the Gentiles? Well was the hand of him lifted up upon the pride of them at the end, for they too have now known Christ. For the end of the law is Christ for righteousness to every one believing. How well doth he wish for them, as if angry he is speaking, and he is seeming to speak evil. And oh that there would come to pass the evil which he speaketh, nay now in the name of Christ that it is coming to pass, let us rejoice. Now they, holding the scepter, are being made subject to the word of the cross. Now is coming to pass that which was foretold. There shall adore him all the kings of the earth, all nations shall serve him. Now on the brows of kings more precious is the sign of the cross than the jewel of a crown. Lift up thine hand upon the pride of them at the end. How great things hath the enemy of malice wrought in thy holy places! In those which were thy holy places, that is, in the temple, in the priesthood, in all those sacraments which were at the time, how great things hath the enemy of malice wrought! In good sooth the enemy at that time wrought, for the Gentiles at that time who did this were worshipping false gods, were adoring idols, were serving demons. Nevertheless they wrought many evil things on the saints of God. When could they, if they had not been permitted? But when would they have been permitted, unless those holy things at first promised were no longer necessary, when he that had promised was himself holden? Therefore, how great things hath the enemy of malice wrought in thy holy places! Verse 4. And all they have boasted that hate thee. Observe the servants of demons, the servants of idols, such as at that time the Gentiles were, when they overthrew the temple and city of God, and they boasted in the midst of thy festival. Remember what I said, that Jerusalem was overthrown at the time when the very festival was being celebrated, at which festival they crucified the Lord. Gathered together, they raged. Gathered together, they perished. End of Part 1 of Psalm 74 by St. Augustine of Hippo. Read by David Ronald. Psalm 74, Part 2 of Expositions on the Book of Psalms, Volume 3. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Expositions on the Book of Psalms, Volume 3, by St. Augustine of Hippo. Psalm 74, Part 2. They have set signs, their own signs. Verse 5. And they have not known. They had signs to place there, their standards, their eagles, their own dragons, the Roman signs, or even their statues, which at first in the temple they placed, or perchance their signs are the things which they heard from the prophets of their demons. And they have not known. have not known what? How thou shouldest have had no power against me, except it had been given thee from above. They knew not how that not on themselves honor was conferred to afflict, to take, or overthrow the city, but their ungodliness was made, as it were, the axe of God. They were made the instrument of him enraged, not so as to be the kingdom of him pacified. For God doth that which a man also ofttime doth. Sometimes a man in a rage catcheth up a rod lying in the way, perchance any sort of stick, he smiteth therewith his son, and then throweth the stick into the fire, and reserveth the inheritance for his son. So sometime God through evil men doth instruct good men, and through the temporal power of them that are to be condemned, he worketh the discipline of them that are to be saved. For why do ye suppose, brethren, that discipline was even thus inflicted upon that nation, in order that it might perish utterly? How many out of this nation did afterwards believe? How many are yet to believe? Some are chaff, others grain. Over both, however, there cometh in the threshing drag, but under one threshing drag the one is broken up, the other is purged. How great a good hath God bestowed upon us by the evil of Judas the traitor! By the very ferocity of the Jews, how great a good was bestowed upon believing Gentiles! Christ was slain in order that there might be on the cross one for him to look to who had been stung by the serpent. Thus then these men also perchance had heard from their diviners that they ought to go to Jerusalem and take her captive, and when they had taken and overthrown her, they said to themselves that it had been done by their devils. They have set signs, their own signs, and they have not known. Have not known what? As in the going forth from above. How that, unless from above there went forth a mandate, never would such things have been permitted to the Gentiles raging against the people of the Jews. But it went forth from above, as Daniel saith, from the beginning of thy prayer there went forth a word. The same also the Lord said to Pilate, puffing up himself, and setting for signs his own signs, and not knowing, and saying to Christ, To me makest thou no answer? Knowest thou not that I have the power to kill thee, and have power to let thee go? And to him swollen, as though pricking a blown bladder, the Lord saith, Thou couldst have no power against me, unless it had been given to thee from above. So also here, they have set signs, their own signs, and they have not known. How have they not known? As in the going forth from above. Were they, by any means, able to understand how the going forth took place from above, to the end that this might be fulfilled? Now, let us hasten over the verses following after the destruction of Jerusalem, for the reason that they are both evident, and it doth not please me to tarry over the punishment even of enemies, as if in a forest of trees with axes. Verse 6, they have cut down the doors thereof at once, with mattock and hammer they have thrown her down. That is, conspiring together with firm determination, with mattock and hammer they have thrown her down. Verse 7, they have burned with fire thy sanctuary, they have defiled on the ground the tabernacle of thy name. Verse 8, they have said in their heart, the kindred of them is in one. Have said what? Come ye, let us suppress the solemnities of the Lord from the land. Of the Lord hath been inserted in the person of this man, that is, in the person of Asaph. For they, raging, would not have called him the Lord, whose temple they were overthrowing. Come ye, let us suppress all the solemnities of the Lord from the land. What of Asaph? What understanding hath Asaph in these words? What? Doth he not profit even by the discipline accorded? Is not the mind's crookedness made straight? Overthrown were all things that were at first. Nowhere is there priest, nowhere altar of the Jews, nowhere victim, nowhere temple. Is there then no other thing to be acknowledged which succeeded this departing? Or indeed, would this promissory sign have been taken away, unless there had come that which was being promised? Let us see, therefore, in this place now the understanding of Asaph. Let us see if he profiteth by tribulation. Observe what he saith. Verse 9. Our signs we have not seen, no longer is their profit, and us he will not know as yet. Behold, those Jews who say that they are not known as yet, that is, that they are yet in captivity, that not yet they are delivered, do yet expect Christ. Christ will come, but he will come as judge, the first time to call, afterwards to sever. He will come, because he hath come, and that he will come is evident, but hereafter, from above, he will come. Before thee he was, O Israel. Thou wast bruised, because thou didst stumble against him lying down, that thou mayest not be ground to powder. Observe him coming from above. For thus it was foretold by the prophet, Whoever shall stumble upon that stone shall be bruised, and upon whomsoever it shall have come, it shall grind him to powder. He doth bruise when little, he shall grind to powder when great. Now thy signs thou seest not, now there is no prophet, and thou sayest, and us he will not know as yet. Because yourselves know not him as yet. No longer is there a prophet, and us he will not know as yet. Verse 10. How long, O God, shall the enemy revile? Cry out as if forsaken, as if deserted. Cry out like a sick man who has chosen rather to smite the physician than to be made whole. Not as yet doth he know thee. See what he hath done. Who doth not know thee as yet? For they too, whom there hath been no preaching of him, shall see, and they that have not heard shall understand. And thou yet criest out, No longer is there a prophet, and us he will not know as yet. Where is thine understanding? The adversary doth provoke thy name at the end. For this purpose the adversary doth provoke thy name at the end, that being provoked thou mayest reprove, reproving thou mayest know them at the end, or certainly at the end in the sense of even unto the end. Even unto what end? Until thou knowest, until thou criest, until grasping the tail thou return to the kingdom. Verse 11. Wherefore dost thou turn away thine hand and thy right hand from the midst of thy bosom unto the end? Again, another sign which was given to Moses, for in like manner as above from the rod was a sign, so also from the right hand now. For when that thing had been done concerning the rod, God gave a second sign. Thrust, he saith, thine hand into thy bosom, and he thrust it. Draw it forth, and he drew it forth, and it was found white, that is, unclean. For whiteness on the skin is leprosy, not fairness of complexion. For the heritage of God itself, that is, his people, being cast out, became unclean. But what saith he to him? Draw it back into thy bosom. He drew it back, and it was restored to its own color. When doest thou this, saith this Asaph? How long dost thou alienate thy right hand from thy bosom, so that being without unclean, it remaineth? Draw it back, let it return to its color, let it acknowledge the Saviour. Wherefore dost thou turn away thine hand, and thy right hand from the midst of thy bosom, unto the end? These words he crieth, being blind, not understanding, and God doeth what he doeth. For wherefore came Christ? Blindness in part happened unto Israel, in order that the fullness of the Gentiles might enter in, and so all Israel might be saved. Therefore, now, O Asaph, acknowledge that which hath gone before, in order that thou mayest at least follow, if thou wast not able to go before. For not in vain came Christ, or in vain was Christ slain, or in vain did the corn fall into the ground, but it fell that it might rise manifold. A serpent was lifted up in the desert, in order that it might cure of the poison him that was smitten. Observe what was done. Do not think it to be a vain thing that he came, lest he find thee evil, when he shall have come a second time. Asaph hath understood, because on the title of the psalm there is, Understanding of Asaph. And what saith he? Verse 12. But God, our King, before the worlds, hath wrought salvation in the midst of the earth. On the one hand, we cry, no longer is there prophet, and us he will not know as yet. But on the other hand, our God, our King, who is before the worlds, for he is himself in the beginning the Word, by whom were made the worlds, hath wrought salvation in the midst of the earth. God therefore, our King before the worlds, hath done what? Hath wrought salvation in the midst of the earth. And I am yet crying as if forsaken. He doth work salvation in the midst of the earth, and I have remained earth. Asaph hath well understood, because it is understanding of Asaph. But why these things, or what sort of salvation hath Christ wrought, but that men may learn to long after things eternal, and not always cleave to things temporal? But God, our King, before the worlds, hath wrought salvation in the midst of the earth. While we are crying, How long, O Lord, shall the enemy revile at the end? How long doth the adversary provoke? How long doth thou turn away thine hand from thy bosom? We, the while, are saying these words, But God, our King before the worlds, hath wrought salvation in the midst of the earth, and we are sleeping. Now the Gentiles are awake, and we are snoring, and as though God hath forsaken us, in dreams we are delirious. He hath wrought salvation in the midst of the earth. Now, therefore, O Asaph, amend thyself according to thy understanding. Tell us what sort of salvation God hath wrought in the midst of the earth. When that earthly salvation of yours was overthrown, what did he do? What did he promise? Verse 13. Thou didst confirm in thy virtue the sea. As though the nation of the Jews were as it were dry land severed from the waves, the Gentiles in their bitterness were the sea, and on all sides they washed about that land. Behold, thou hast confirmed in thy virtue the sea, and the land remained thirsting for thy rain. Thou hast confirmed in thy virtue the sea, thou hast broken in pieces the heads of dragons in the water. Dragons' heads, that is, demons' pride, wherewith the Gentiles were possessed, thou hast broken in pieces upon the water. For those persons whom they were possessing, thou by baptism hast delivered. What more after the heads of dragons? For those dragons have their chief, and he is himself the first great dragon. And concerning him, what hath he done that hath wrought salvation in the midst of the earth? Hear, verse 14. Thou hast broken the head of the dragon. Of what dragon? We understand by dragons all the demons that war under the devil. What single dragon then, whose head was broken, but the devil himself ought we to understand? What with him hath he done? Thou hast broken the head of the dragon, that is, the beginning of sin. That head is the part which received the curse, to wit, what the seed of Eve should mark the head of the serpent. For the church was admonished to shun the beginning of sin. Which is that beginning of sin, like the head of a serpent? The beginning of all sin is pride. There hath been broken therefore the head of the dragon, hath been broken pride diabolical. And what with him hath he done that hath wrought salvation in the midst of the earth? Thou hast given him for a morsel to the Ethiopian peoples. What is this? How do I understand the Ethiopian peoples? How, but by these all nations, and properly by black men, for Ethiopians are black. They are themselves called to the faith who are black, the very same indeed, so that there is said to them, For ye were sometime darkness, but now light in the Lord. They are themselves indeed called black, but let them not remain black, for out of these is made the church, to whom is said, Who is she that hath gone up made white? For what hath been made out of her black, save that which hath been spoken of in black I am, but comely? And how have these men received for meat that dragon? I suppose that they have rather received Christ for meat, but Christ whereby they may consummate themselves, the devil whom they may consume. For thence was also that calf which was the people worshipped, unbelieving, apostate, seeking the gods of the Egyptians, forsaking him who had delivered them from the slavery of the Egyptians, whence there was enacted that great sacrament. For when Moses was thus wroth with them, worshipping and adoring the idol, and, inflamed with the zeal for God, was punishing temporarily in order that he might terrify them to shun death everlasting, yet the head itself of the calf he cast into the fire, and ground to powder, destroyed, strawed on the water, and gave to the people to drink. So there was enacted a great sacrament. O anger prophetic, and mind not perturbed but enlightened! He did what? Cast it into the fire, in order that first the form itself may be obliterated. Piece by piece, grind it down, in order that little by little it may be consumed. Cast it into the water, give to the people to drink. What is this but that the worshippers of the devil were become the body of the same? In the same manner as men confessing Christ become the body of Christ, so that to them is said, but ye are the body of Christ, and the members. The body of the devil was to be consumed, and that too by Israelites was to be consumed. For out of that people were the apostles, out of that people the first church. And it was said to Peter concerning the Gentiles, kill and eat. What is kill and eat? Slay thou the thing which they are, and make them that which thou art. On the one hand, kill and eat. On the other hand, break in pieces and drink. But both are in the same sacrament, because it must have needs been, and without doubt must have needs been, that the body, which was of the devil, by believing should pass over into the body of Christ. Thus the devil is being consumed with the loss of his members. This was figured also in the serpent of Moses. For the magicians did likewise, and casting down their rods, they exhibited serpents. But the serpent of Moses swallowed up the rods of all the magicians. Let there be perceived, therefore, even now the body of the devil. This is what is coming to pass. He is being devoured by the Gentiles, who have believed. He hath become meat for the Ethiopian peoples. This again may be perceived in, thou hast given him for meat to the Ethiopian peoples. How that now all men bite him. What is bite him? By reproving, blaming, accusing, just as hath been said, by way of prohibition indeed, but yet the idea expressed, but if ye bite and eat up one another, take heed that ye be not consumed of one another. What is bite and eat up one another? Ye go to law with one another, ye detract from one another, ye heap revilings upon one another. Observe, therefore, now how that with these bitings the devil is being consumed. What man, when angry with his servant, even a heathen, would not say to him, Satan? Behold, the devil given for meat. This saith Christian, this saith Jew, this saith heathen. Him he worshippeth, and with him he curseth. Let us, therefore, look to the remaining verses, brethren. I beseech you attend. With great pleasure they are heard, because when heard, even throughout the round world, they are recognized. When these things were being spoken of, they were not, because at that time they were in promise. They were not then in accomplishment. But now, with what pleasure we are penetrated, when those things which we read of predicted in a book we see fulfilled in the world. Let us see what he hath done, whom now Asaph doth understand, how he hath wrought salvation in the midst of the earth. Verse 15. Thou hast cleft the fountains and torrents. in order that they might flow with the stream of wisdom, might flow with the riches of the faith, might water the saltness of the Gentiles, in order that they might convert all unbelievers into the sweetness of the faith by their watering, thou hast cleft the fountains and torrents. Perhaps it is a distinct thing, perhaps it is one thing, because the fountains were so abundant as to make rivers. Thou hast cleft the fountains and torrents. But if for distinction's sake, in some men the word of God becometh a well of water springing up unto life eternal, but others hearing the word, and not so keeping it as that they live well, yet not keeping silence with tongue, they become torrents. For they are properly called torrents, which are not perennial. For sometimes also in a secondary sense torrent is used for river, as hath been said, they shall be inebriated with the plenteousness of thy house, and with the torrent of thy pleasures thou shalt give them to drink. For that torrent shall not ever be dried up. But torrents properly are those rivers named, which in summer fail, but with winter rains are flooded and run. Thou seest therefore a man sound in faith, that will persevere even unto the end, that will not forsake God in any trial, for the sake of the truth, not for the sake of falsehood and error, enduring all difficulties. Whence is this man so vigorous, but because the word hath become in him a well of water springing up unto eternal life? But the other receiveth the word, he preacheth, he is not silent, he runneth, but some reproveth whether he be a fountain or torrent. Nevertheless, through both be the earth watered, by him who hath wrought salvation in the midst of the earth. Let the fountains overflow, let the torrents run. Thou hast cleft fountains and torrents. Verse 16. Thou hast dried up the rivers of Atheism. On the one side he breaketh up fountains and torrents, on the other he drieth up rivers, in order that from those may run waters, and from these waters may be dried up. Rivers, he saith, of Atheism. What is Atheism? For the word is Hebrew. What is Atheism interpreted? Strong, stout. Who is the strong and stout one, whose rivers God drieth up? Who but that very dragon? For no one entereth into the house of a strong man, that he may spoil his vessels, unless first he shall have bound fast the strong man. This is that strong man on his own virtue relying, and forsaking God. This is that strong man who saith, I will set my seat by the north, and I will be like the Most High. Out of that very cup of perverse strength he hath given man to drink. Strong they will to be, who thought that they who would be gods by means of the forbidden food. Adam became strong, over whom was reproachfully said, Behold, Adam hath become like one of us, for knowing not God's righteousness, and seeking to establish their own righteousness, as though they were strong, to the righteousness of God they have not been made subject. Observe ye that a man hath put out of the way his own strength, and remained weak, needy, standing afar off, not daring even to raise his eyes to heaven, but smiting his breast and saying, O Lord, merciful be thou to me, a sinner. Now he is weak, now he confesseth his weakness. He is not strong, dry land he is, be he watered with fountains and torrents. They are as yet strong who rely on their own virtue, but their rivers dried up. Let there be no advancement in the doctrines of the Gentiles, of wizards, of astrologers, of magic arts, for dried up are the rivers of the strong man. Thou hast dried up the rivers of Atheism. Let there dry up that doctrine. Let minds be flooded with the gospel of truth. End of Psalm 74, Part 2, by St. Augustine of Hippo. Read by David Ronald. Psalm 74, Part 3 of Expositions on the Book of Psalms, Volume 3. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Expositions on the Book of Psalms, Volume 3, Psalm 74, Part 3. Verse 16. Thine own is the day, and thine own is the night. Who is ignorant of this, seeing that he hath himself made all these things? For by the word were made all things. To that very one himself, who hath wrought salvation in the midst of the earth, to him is said, Thine own is the night. Something here we ought to perceive, which belongeth to that very salvation which he hath wrought in the midst of the earth. Thine own is the day. Who are these? The spiritual. And thine own is the night. Who are these? The carnal. Thine own is the day, and thine own is the night. Let the spiritual speak spiritual things to the spiritual, for it hath been said, with things spiritual, comparing, we speak wisdom among the perfect. Not yet do carnal men receive this wisdom. I could not speak to you as if unto spiritual men, but as if unto carnal men. Therefore, when spiritual men are speaking unto spiritual men, day unto day is breaking forth the word. But while even carnal men themselves do not keep secret the faith of Christ crucified, which they are able to receive, though being but little, night unto night is telling forth knowledge. Thine own is the day, and thine own is the night. Unto thee belong spiritual men, unto thee belong carnal men. Those thou dost enlighten with immutable wisdom and truth, these thou dost comfort with the manifestation of the flesh, as it were the moon comforting the night. Thine own is the day, and thine own is the night. Wilt thou hear the day? See whether thou canst receive it. Lift up, as much as thou art able, thy mind. Let us see whether thou dost belong to the day. Let us now see, if thy face doth not shrink therefrom. Canst thou see that which thou hast heard but now from the gospel? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. For thou knowest not how to think of any words save those which sound and pass away. Canst thou now receive the Word not as a sound, but as God? Hast thou not there heard, and the Word was God? But thou art thinking of these words, all things by himself were made, and by himself were made even they that make words. Of what sort then is that word? Dost thou receive him, O carnal man? Answer me, dost thou receive him? Thou dost not receive him yet, unto night thou belongest. A moon for thee is necessary, lest in darkness thou die. For certain sinners have bended the bow in order that they might shoot under the obscure moon men right in the heart. For the flesh of Christ was obscured when it was taken down from the cross and laid in the tomb, and they that slew him gloried over him, and he had not yet risen again, and his disciples were shot at, men right in heart, but under the obscure moon. Therefore, in order that not only day to day may break forth the word, but also night to night may tell forth knowledge, because thine own is the day, and thine own is the night, vouchsafe thou to come down, to remain with him from whom thou comest down, but to come to those unto whom thou comest down. Vouchsafe to come down, who wast in this world, and the world by thee was made, and the world knew thee not. Let even night have her consolation. Let her have it, he saith. The Word was made flesh, and dwelled in us. Thine own is the day, and thine own is the night. Thou hast made perfect sun and moon, the sun spiritual men, the moon carnal men. And yet carnal he is, may he not be forsaken, and may he too be made perfect. Thou hast made perfect sun and moon, the sun as it were a wise man, the moon as it were an unwise man. Thou hast not, however, forsaken. For thus it is written, A wise man endureth as the sun, but a foolish man as the moon is changed. What then? Because the sun endureth, that is, because the wise man endureth as the sun, a foolish man is changed like the moon, is one as yet carnal, as yet unwise, to be forsaken? And where is that which hath been said by the apostle, To the wise and unwise a debtor I am, Thou hast made perfect the sun and the moon. Verse 17, Thou hast made all the ends of the earth. Had he not also made them before, when he founded the earth? But in what manner hath he made the ends of the earth, who hath wrought salvation in the midst of the earth? In what manner, save in that manner whereof the apostle saith, But by grace we are saved, and that not of ourselves, but God's gift it is, not of works, lest perchance a man be exalted. Therefore, were there no good works? There were, but in what manner? By the grace of God. Go on, let us see. For of himself we are the workmanship, created in Christ Jesus in good works. Behold, in what manner he hath made the ends of the earth, that hath wrought salvation in the midst of the earth. Thou hast made all the ends of the earth. Summer and spring, thou hast made them. Men fervent in spirit are the summer. Thou, I say, hast made men fervent in the spirit. Thou hast made also the novices in the faith. They are the spring. Summer and spring thou hast made them. They shall not glory as if they have not received. Thou hast made them. Verse 18. Mindful be thou of this thy creature. Of what creature of thine? The enemy hath reviled the Lord. O Asaph, grieve over thine old blindness in understanding. The enemy hath reviled the Lord. It was said to Christ in his own nation, A sinner is this man. We know not whence he is. We know Moses. To him spake God. This man is a Samaritan. The enemy hath reviled the Lord, and the unwise people hath provoked thy name. The unwise people, Asaph, was at that time, but not the understanding of Asaph at that time. What is said in the former psalm? As it were, a beast I have become unto thee, and I am alway with thee. Because he went not to the gods and idols of the Gentiles, although he knew not, being like a beast, yet he knew again as a man. For he said, Alway I am with thee, like a beast. And what afterwards, in that place in the same psalm where Asaph is? Thou hast held the hand of my right hand. In thy will thou hast conducted me, and with glory thou hast taken me up. In thy will, not in my righteousness, by thy gift, not by my work. Therefore, here also the enemy hath reviled the Lord, and the unwise people hath provoked thy name. Have they all then perished? Far be it. Even if some of the branches have been broken, there remain, nevertheless, some whereupon the wild olive might be grafted in, and the root remaineth. And out of those same branches, through unbelief broken, there have been recovered some through faith. For even the apostle Paul, through unbelief, had been broken, and through faith unto the root he was restored. So evidently the unwise people provoked thy name, when it was said, If Son of God he is, let him come down from the cross. But what sayest thou, O Asaph, now in understanding? Verse 19. Deliver not to the beasts a soul confessing to thee. I acknowledge, saith Asaph, for, as in another psalm is said, My sin I am conscious of, and my evil doing I have not covered. Wherefore? Because Peter hath spoken to the Israelites, marveling at the tongues, how that they themselves killed Christ, though, for their sakes, Christ was sent. When they heard this, they were pricked in heart, and they said to the apostles, What then shall we do? Tell us. And the apostles, Do penance, and be baptized, each one of you, in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, and there shall be remitted to you your sins. Because then, through penance, confession hath come. Deliver not to the beasts a soul confessing to thee. Why confessing to thee? Because I am converted in sorrow, while the thorn is being thrust in. They were pricked in heart, and they became sorrowful in penance, that had been boastful in their saying, Deliver not to the beasts a soul confessing to thee. To what beasts, save to those, the heads whereof were broken in pieces upon the water? For the same devil is called beast, lion, and dragon. Do not, he saith, give to the devil and his angels a soul confessing to thee. Let the serpent devour, if still I mind things earthly, if for things earthly I long, if still in the promises of the Old Testament, after the revealing of the New, I remain. But forasmuch as now I have laid down pride, and my own righteousness I will not acknowledge, but thy grace, against me, let proud beasts have no power. Deliver not to the beasts a soul confessing thee. The souls of thy poor forget thou not unto the end. Rich we were, strong we were, but thou hast dried up the rivers of Etham. No longer we establish our own righteousness, but we acknowledge thy grace. Poor we are, hearken to thy beggars. Now we do not dare to lift our eyes to heaven, but smiting our breasts, we say, O Lord, be thou merciful to me, a sinner. The soul of thy poor forget not at the end. Verse 20. Have regard unto thy testament. Fulfill that which thou hast promised. The tables we have, for the inheritance we are looking. Have regard unto thy testament, not that old one, not for the sake of the land of Canaan, I ask, not for the sake of carnal fruitfulness of sons, not for the sake of earthly riches, not for the sake of temporal welfare. Have regard unto thy testament, wherein thou hast promised the kingdom of heaven. Now I acknowledge thy testament. Now understanding is Asaph, no beast is Asaph. Now he seeth that which was spoken of. Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, and I will accomplish with the house of Israel and of Judah a new testament, not after the testament which I have ordered from their fathers. Have regard unto thy testament, for they that have been darkened have been filled of the earth of unrighteous houses, because they had unrighteous hearts. Our houses are our hearts. Therein gladly dwell they that are blessed with a pure heart. Have regard, therefore, unto thy testament, and let the remnant be saved. For many men that give heed to earth are darkened, and filled with earth. For there hath entered into their eyes dust, and it hath blinded them, and they have become dust, which the wind sweepeth from the face of the earth. They that have been darkened have been filled of the earth of unrighteous houses. For by giving heed to earth they have been darkened, concerning whom there is said in another psalm, Let their eyes be blinded, that they see not, and their back ever bow thou down. With earth, then, they that have been darkened have been filled with the earth of unrighteous houses, because they have unrighteous hearts. For our houses, as we have said above, are our hearts. Therein gladly we dwell, if we cleanse them from that iniquity. There is the evil conscience, which driveth the man from thence, whereunto he is bidden to go, carrying his bed, whose sins have been remitted, at the Lord saying, Take up thy bed, and go into thine house. Carry thy flesh, and enter into thy conscience that is now made whole. For they that have been darkened have been filled of the earth of unrighteous houses. They have been darkened, they have been filled with earth. They that have been obscured are who? They that have unrighteous hearts. To them the Lord rendereth after their heart. Verse 21. Let not the humble man be turned away confounded. For them pride hath confounded. The needy and helpless man shall praise thy name. Ye see, brethren, how sweet ought to be poverty. Ye see that poor and helpless men belong to God, but poor in spirit, for of them is the kingdom of heaven. Who are the poor in spirit? The humble, men trembling at the words of God, confessing their sins, neither on their own merits nor on their own righteousness relying. Who are the poor in spirit? They who, when they do anything of good, praise God, when anything of evil, accuse themselves. Upon whom shall rest my spirit, saith the prophet, but upon the humble man, and peaceful, and trembling at my words. Now therefore Asaph hath understood, now to the earth he adhereth not. Now the earthly promises out of the Old Testament he requireth not. Thy beggar he hath become, thy poor man he hath become. For thy rivers he is thirsting, for his own have been dried up. Seeing then such an one he hath become, may he not be defrauded of his hope. He hath sought with hands by night in thy presence. Let him not be deceived. Let not the humble man be turned away confounded. The needy and helpless man shall praise thy name. Confessing their sins, they shall praise thy name, longing for thine eternal promises. They shall praise thy name, not they that are puffed up because of things temporal, not they that because of their own righteousness are lifted up and distended, not they, but who, the needy and helpless man, shall praise thy name. Verse 22. Arise, O Lord, judge thou my cause. For forsaken I seem, for not yet I have received that which thou hast promised, and my tears have become for me bread by day and by night, while it is said to me daily, Where is thy God? And because I am not able to shew my God, as if I were following an empty thing, they revile me, and not only heathen, or Jew, or heretic, but sometimes even a Catholic brother doth make a grimace when the promises of God are being preached, when a future resurrection is being foretold. And still, even he, though already washed with the water of eternal salvation, bearing the sacrament of Christ, perchance saith, And what man hath yet risen again? And, I have not heard my Father speaking out of the grave since I buried him. God hath given to his servants a law for a time, to which let them betake themselves, for what man cometh back from beneath? And what shall I do with such men? Shall I shew them what they see not? I am not able, for not for the sake of them ought God to be visible. Now let them do this, if they so please. Let them thus do, thus endeavor, because they themselves will not be changed for the better. Let them change God for the worse. Let him see that is able, let him believe that is not able, that there is a God. And if he seeth that is able, doth he with eye see? With understanding he seeth, with heart he seeth. For not sun and moon he willed to shew, who said, Blessed are they of pure heart, for they shall see God. But an impure heart is meet not even for faith, so as that it may even believe that which it seeth not. I see not, he saith, what am I to believe? Thy soul is seen then, I suppose. Fool, thy body is seen, thy soul who doth see? Since therefore thy body alone is seen, why art thou not buried? He marvelleth that I have said, If body alone is seen, why art thou not buried? And he answereth, for he knoweth as much as this, because I am alive. How know I that thou art alive, of whom I see not the soul? How know I? Thou wilt answer, because I speak, because I walk, because I work. Fool, by the operations of the body I know thee to be living, by the works of creation canst thou not know the Creator? And perchance he that saith, When I shall be dead, afterwards I shall be nothing, hath both learned letters, and hath learned this doctrine from Epicurus, who was a sort of doting philosopher, or rather lover of folly, not of wisdom, whom even the philosophers themselves have named the hog, who said that the chief good was pleasure of body. This philosopher they have named the hog, wallowing in carnal mire. From him perchance this lettered man hath learned to say, I shall not be, after I have died. Dried be the rivers of Etham. Perish those doctrines of the Gentiles, flourish the plantations of Jerusalem. Let them see what they can, in heart believe what they cannot see. Certainly, all those things which throughout the world now are seen, when God was working salvation in the midst of the earth, when those things were being spoken of, they were not then as yet, and behold, at that time they were foretold, now they are shewn as fulfilled, and still the fool saith in his heart, There is no God. Woe to the perverse hearts! For so will there come to pass the things which remain, as there have come to pass the things which at that time were not, and were being foretold as to come to pass. Hath God indeed performed to us all the things which he promised, and concerning the day of judgment alone hath he deceived us? Christ was not on the earth, he promised, he hath performed. No virgin had conceived, he promised, he hath performed. The precious blood had not been shed, whereby there should be effaced the handwriting of our death, he promised, he hath performed. Not yet had flesh risen again unto eternal life, he promised, he hath performed. Not yet had the Gentiles believed, he promised, he hath performed. Not yet heretics armed with the name of Christ
against Christ were warring. He foretold, he hath performed. Not yet the idols of the Gentiles from the earth had been effaced. He foretold, he hath performed. When all these things he hath foretold and performed, concerning the day of judgment alone hath he lied. It will come by all means as these things came. For even these things before they came to pass were future, and as future were first foretold, and afterwards they came to pass. It will come, my brethren. Let no one say, it will not come, or it will come, but far off is that which will come. But to thyself it is near, at hand, to go hence. Let the first deception suffice. If we have not been able to remain in the precept, at least let us be amended by example. Not yet was there an example of human falling, when it was said to Adam, with death thou shalt die, if thou shalt have touched. And there came athwart the serpent, and said, Thou shalt not die with death. Believed was the serpent, despised was God. Believed was the serpent, touched was the thing forbidden. Man died. Was there not more fulfilled that which God had threatened than what the enemy had promised? So it is indeed. We acknowledge this. Thence all men are under death. Now that we have experience, let us beware. For even now the serpent doth not cease to whisper in our ears, and to say, Will God indeed condemn so great multitudes, and save so few? What else is this but, do contrary to commandment, ye will not die? But as it was then, so also it is now. If thou shalt have done that which the devil doth suggest, and shalt have despised that which God hath commanded, there will come the judgment day, and thou wilt find that true which God hath threatened, and that false which the devil hath promised. Arise, O Lord, judge thou my cause. Dead thou art, and despised thou art. It is being said to me, Where is thy God? Arise, judge thou my cause. For there is not to come to judgment any but he that hath arisen from the dead. As to come, he was foretold, he came, and he was despised by the Jews while walking upon the earth. He is despised by false Christians while sitting in heaven. Arise, O Lord, judge thou my cause. Because in thee I have believed, let me not perish. Because I have believed that which I have not seen of my hope, let me not be beguiled. Let me receive that which thou hast promised. Judge thou my cause. Remember thy reproaches, those which are from the imprudent man all the day long. For still Christ is reviled, nor will there be wanting all the day long, that is, even unto the end of time, the vessels of wrath. Still is it being said, vain things the Christians do preach. Still is it being said, a fond thing is the resurrection of the dead. Judge thou my cause. Remember thy reproaches. But what reproaches, save those which are from the imprudent man all the day long? Doth a prudent man say this? Nay, for a prudent man is said to be one far-seeing. If a prudent man is one far-seeing, by faith he seeth afar. For with eyes scarce that before the feet is seen, all the day long. Verse 23. Forget not the voice of them that implore thee, while they groan for and expect now that which thou hast promised from the New Testament, and walk by that same faith, do thou not forget the voice of them imploring thee. But those will say, Where is thy God? Let the pride of them that hate thee come up alway to thee. Do not forget even their pride, nor doth he forget. No doubt he doth either punish or amend. End of Psalm 74. Read by David Ronald.
Psalm 75, Part 1 of Expositions on the Book of Psalms, Volume 3. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Expositions on the Book of Psalms, Volume 3, by St. Augustine of Hippo. Psalm 75, Part 1. Exposition. Sermon to the Commonalty. This psalm to the swelling pride applieth the medicine of humility, but the humble it doth comfort and hope, with this design, that not any one may proudly rely on himself, that not any humble man may despair of the Lord. For the promise of God is ratified, sure, fixed, and unshaken, faithful, and devoid of all doubt, which doth comfort the afflicted. For the whole life of man upon the earth, as it is written, is trial. Nor is one as it were prosperous to be chosen, and adversity alone to be shunned, but of both we are to beware, of the one lest it corrupt, of the other lest it crush. So that for every man, in whatever state of affairs he shall have lived in this life, there may be no refuge but God, nor any joy but in His promises. For this life with whatsoever felicity overflowing doth deceive many men, God no man. Because then to every man, when converted unto God, his pursuit is changed, his pleasures are changed. For they are not withdrawn, but are changed. So all our pleasures in this life are not yet in substance, but in hope. But the hope itself is so sure, that to all this world's pleasures it is to be preferred, as it is written, Delight thyself in the Lord. And that thou mightest not think thyself already to have that which He doth promise, He addeth forthwith, and He shall give thee the petitions of thy heart. If then not yet thou hast the petitions of thy heart, whence dost thou delight in the Lord, except because thou hast a sure promiser, who hath made Himself by promising a debtor? Of this entreaty then, in order that our hope may remain with us, and that we may be introduced unto that which God hath promised, the title of this psalm speaketh, At the end, corrupt not. What is corrupt not? That which thou hast promised, perform. But when? At the end. To this then let the mind's eye be directed, unto the end. Let all the things which have occurred in the way be passed over, in order that we may attain to the end. Let proud men exult because of present felicity, let them swell with honours, glitter in gold, overflow with domestics, be encircled with the services of clients. These things pass away, they pass away like a shadow. When that end shall have come, when all who now hope in the Lord are to rejoice, then to them shall come sorrow without end. When the meek shall have received that which the proud deride, then the vapouring of the proud shall be turned into mourning. Then shall there be that voice which we know in the book of wisdom, for they shall say at that time when they see the glory of the saints, who, when they were in humiliation, endured them, who, when they were exalted, consented not. At that time then they shall say, These are they whom sometime we have had in derision. Where they also say, What hath pride profited us, and the boasting of riches hath bestowed upon us what? All things have passed away like a shadow. Because on things corruptible they relied, their hope shall be corrupted. But our own hope at that time shall be substance. For in order that the promise of God may remain whole and sure and certain towards us, we have said out of the heart of faith, At the end, corrupt not. Fear not, therefore, lest any mighty man should corrupt the promises of God. He doth not corrupt because he is truthful. He hath no one more mighty by whom His promise may be corrupted. Let us be then sure concerning the promises of God. And let us sing now from the place where the psalm beginneth. Verse 1. We will confess to Thee, O Lord, we will confess to Thee, and will invoke Thy name. Do not invoke before thou confess. Confess and invoke. For him whom thou art invoking, unto thyself thou callest. For what is it to invoke, but unto thyself to call? If he is invoked by thee, that is, if he is called to thee, unto whom doth he draw near? To a proud man he draweth not near. High indeed he is, one lifted up attaineth not unto him. In order that we may reach all exalted objects, we raise ourselves, and if we are not able to reach them, we look for some appliances or ladders, in order that being exalted we may reach exalted objects. Contrariwise, God is both high, and by the lowly he is reached. It is written, Nigh is the Lord to them that have bruised the heart. The bruising of the heart is godliness, humility. He that bruiseth himself is angry with himself. Let him make himself angry in order that he may make him merciful. Let him make himself judge in order that he may make him advocate. Therefore God doth come when invoked. Unto whom doth he come? To the proud man he cometh not. Hear another testimony. Exalted is the Lord, and things lowly he regardeth, but things exalted from afar he scanneth. Exalted is the Lord, and things lowly he regardeth, not from afar, but things exalted from afar he scanneth. And lest perchance when it was being said that he regardeth things lowly, proud men should rejoice for their impunity, as if he that dwelleth in exalted places doth not observe them in their pride, they are terrified, and there is said to them, He seeth you, and scanneth you, but from afar. Those he maketh blessed, unto whom he approacheth. But ye, he saith, O proud men, O exalted men, shall not be unpunished, because he scanneth, shall not be blessed, because from afar he scanneth you. Take heed therefore what ye do, for if he knoweth, he is not unobservant. It is better therefore that he be unobservant than known. For what is that same being unobservant but not knowing? What is not to know? Not to animadvert. For even as the act of one avenging animadversion is wont to be spoken of, hear one praying that he be unobservant. Turn away thy face from my sins. What then wilt thou do if he shall have turned away his face from thee? A grievous thing it is, and to be feared, lest he forsake thee. Again, if he turn not away his face, he animadverteth. God knoweth this thing, God can do this thing, namely, both turn away face from one sinning, and not turn away from one confessing. Therefore in one place to him is said, Turn away thy face from my sins. And in another place to him is said, Turn not away thy face from me. There, from my sins turn away, but here, from me turn not away. Confess therefore and invoke, for by confessing thou purgest the temple, into which he may come, when invoked. Confess and invoke. May he turn away face from thy sins, turn not away from thee. Turn away face from that which thou hast wrought, not turn away from that which he hath himself wrought. For thee, as man, he hath himself wrought, thy sins thou hast thyself wrought. Confess therefore and invoke. Say, We will confess to thee, O Lord, we will confess to thee. This repetition is confirmation, that it doth not repent thee to have confessed. For not to any cruel one thou hast confessed, nor to one vindictive, nor to one that upbraideth. Confess securely. Hear another voice of a psalm exhorting, Confess ye to the Lord, for good he is. What is for good he is? Why do ye fear to confess? Good he is. He is unobservant when one confesseth. Fear to confess to a human judge, lest perchance he punish thee after confession. To God fear not. Make him, by confessing, merciful, whom by denying thou dost not make ignorant. We will confess to Thee, O God, we will confess. And now being secure, we will invoke Thy name. We have emptied our hearts by confession. Thou hast terrified, hast purged. Confession doth make us humble. Draw Thou near to us humble, who dost withdraw from us exalted. But that there is a strengthening of the sense and repetition by many passages of the Scriptures we are taught. Thence is that which the Lord saith, Verily, verily. Thence in certain Psalms is, So be it, so be it. To signify the thing, one so be it would have been sufficient. To signify confirmation, there hath been added another, so be it. Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Ye know how that, when Joseph was in that country, because of his love of chastity now shut up in prison, this Pharaoh saw a dream well known to us all. By 7 lean kine there were devoured 7 fat kine. And again, that by 7 thin ears of corn were devoured 7 fruitful ears. And how did Joseph interpret? If you remember, he said that these dreams were not 2, but 1 vision. One is, he saith, their interpretation. But that thou hast seen it again, he saith, doth signify confirmation. These words I have said, that ye may not suppose that repetition in the words of the holy language is, as it were, a love of talkativeness. Oftentimes therein repetition hath the force of confirmation. Prepared is my heart, O God, he saith, prepared is my heart. In another place he saith, Wait for the Lord, do manfully, and may He strengthen thy heart, and wait for the Lord. Countless passages of such sort there are throughout all the Scriptures. With these it is sufficient that we have commended to your notice a way of speaking which we may observe in all like cases. Now to the substance attend. We will confess to Thee, he saith, and we will invoke. I have said why before invocation confession doth precede, because whom thou dost invoke, him thou dost invite. But he willeth not to come when invoked, if thou shalt have been lifted up. Lifted up if thou shalt have been, thou wilt not be able to confess. And thou deniest not any things to God that He knoweth not. Therefore thy confession doth not teach Him, but it purgeth thee. And now he hath confessed, he hath invoked. Yea, they have confessed, they have invoked, and it is said in the person of one man, I will tell forth all thy marvellous things. Having confessed, he hath emptied himself of evil things. Invoking, he hath filled himself with good things. In telling forth he hath belched out that wherewith he hath filled himself. And observe, brethren, when they were confessing there were many. We will confess to Thee, O God, we will confess to Thee, and we will invoke Thy name. For many are the hearts of men confessing, one of men believing. Why is it that many are the hearts of men confessing, one of men believing? Because divers sins men confess, one faith they believe. Now therefore when Christ hath begun to dwell in the inner man through faith, and hath begun when invoked to possess him that hath confessed, there is made up whole Christ, head and body, and out of many one. Hear ye now the words of Christ, for these seemed not as it were to be his words. We will confess to Thee, O God, we will confess to Thee, and will invoke Thy name. Now beginneth the discourse in the person of the head. But whether head speaketh, or whether members speak, Christ speaketh. He speaketh in the person of the head, he speaketh in the person of the body. But what hath been said? There shall be 2 in one flesh. This is a great sacrament. I, he saith, speak in Christ and in the church. And he himself in the gospel. Therefore no longer 2, but one flesh. For in order that ye may know these in a manner to be 2 persons, and again one by the bond of marriage, as one he speaketh in Isaiah, and saith, As upon a bridegroom he hath bound upon me a mitre, and as a bride he hath clothed me with an ornament. A bridegroom he hath called himself in the head, a bride in the body. He is speaking therefore as one. Let us hear him, and in him let us also speak. Let us be the members of him, in order that this voice may possibly be ours also. I will tell forth, he saith, all thy marvellous things. Christ is preaching himself. He is preaching himself even in his members now existing, in order that he may guide unto him others, and they may draw near that were not, and may be united with those members of him, through which members of him the gospel hath been preached, and there may be made one body under one head, in one Spirit, in one life. Verse 2. And he saith what? When I shall have received, he saith, the time, I will judge justices. When shall he judge justices? When he shall have received the time. Not yet is the precise time. Thanks to his mercy, he first preacheth justices, and then he judgeth justices. For if he willed to judge before he willed to preach, who would be found that should be delivered? Who would meet him that should be absolved? Now therefore is the time of preaching. I will tell, he saith, all thy marvellous works. Hear him telling, hear him preaching. For if thou shalt have despised him, when I shall have received the time, he saith, I will judge justices. I forgive, he saith, now sins to one confessing. I will not spare hereafter one despising. Mercy and judgment I will sing to thee, O Lord, is said in a psalm. Mercy and judgment. Now mercy, hereafter judgment. In which mercy sins are forgiven, in which judgment sins are punished. Wilt thou not fear the punisher of sinners? Love the forgiver, scorn him not, exalt not thyself. Say not, I have nothing which he may forgive me. For hear what followeth. When I shall have received the time, I will judge justices. Hath Christ received a time? Hath the Son of God received a time? The Son of God hath not received a time, but the Son of Man hath received a time. But the selfsame person is both Son of God, by whom we were made, and Son of Man, by whom we were made again. By the assuming of man he was not himself assumed. By the changing of man into something better he was by no means changed into anything worse. He ceased not to be what he was, he received that which he was not. He was what? Seeing that in form of God he was, no robbery he judged it to be equal with God. They are the words of the Apostle. And he received what? But he emptied himself, receiving the form of a servant. As the form of a servant he hath received, so also a time he hath received. He hath been changed then? Hath been wasted? Hath been made thinner? Hath fallen off into wasting? Far be it. What then? He hath emptied himself, receiving the form of a servant. He hath been said to have emptied himself by receiving an inferior, not by degenerating from an equal. Therefore, brethren, what is this? When I shall have received the time, I will judge justices. He hath received a time as Son of Man. He doth govern times as Son of God. Hear how as Son of Man he hath received the time of judging. He saith in the Gospel, He hath given to him power to execute judgment, because Son of Man he is. According to his nature as Son of God, he hath never received power of judging, because he never lacked the power of judging. According to his nature as Son of Man, he hath received a time, as of being born, and of suffering, as of dying, and of rising again, and of ascending, so of coming and of judging. In him his body also saith these words, for not without them he will judge. For he saith in the Gospel, Ye shall sit upon 12 thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Therefore whole Christ saith, that is, head and body in the saints, When I shall have received the time, I will judge justices. But now what? Verse 3. The earth hath flowed down. If the earth hath flowed down, whence hath it flowed down except by sins? Therefore also they are called delinquencies. To delinquish is, as it were, by a kind of liquidity, to slip down from the stability of firmness in virtue and righteousness. For it is through desire of lower things that every man sinneth. As he is strengthened by the love of higher things, so he falleth down and as it were melteth away by desire of lower things. This flux of things by the sins of man the merciful Forgiver observing, being a merciful Forgiver of sins, not yet an exactor of punishments, he observeth and saith, The earth hath flowed down, and all they that dwell therein. The earth herself indeed hath flowed down by them that dwell in her. That which followeth is an exposition, not an addition. As though thou wert saying, In what manner hath the earth flowed down? Have the foundations been withdrawn, or hath anything therein been swallowed up in a sort of gulf? What I mean by earth is all they that dwell therein. I have found, he saith, the earth sinful. And I have done what? I have strengthened the pillars thereof. What are the pillars which he hath strengthened? Pillars he hath called the apostles. So the apostle Paul concerning his fellow apostles saith, who seem to be pillars. And what would those pillars have been, except by him they had been strengthened? For on occasion of a sort of earthquake even these very pillars rocked. At the passion of the Lord all the apostles despaired. Therefore those pillars which rocked at the passion of the Lord, by the resurrection were strengthened. The beginning of the building hath cried out through the pillars thereof, and in all those pillars the architect himself hath cried out. For the apostle Paul was one pillar of them when he said, Would ye receive a proof of him that speaketh in me, Christ? Therefore I, he saith, have strengthened the pillars thereof. I have risen again. I have shown that death is not to be feared. I have shown to them that fear, that not even the body itself doth perish in the dying. There terrified them wounds, there strengthened them scars. The Lord Jesus could have risen again without any scar, for what great matter were it for that power to restore the frame of the body to such perfect soundness, as that no trace at all of past wound should appear. He had power whence he might make it whole even without scar, but he willed to have that whereby he might strengthen the rocking pillars. End of Psalm 75, Part 1. Psalm 75, Part 2 of Expositions on the Book of Psalms, Volume 3. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Expositions on the Book of Psalms, Volume 3, by St. Augustine of Hippo, Psalm 75, Part 2. We have heard now, brethren, that which day by day is not kept secret. Let us hear now what he hath cried through these pillars. It is time to hear because of that terrific utterance, I will judge justices when I shall have received the time. He is to receive the time of judging justices, ye even now have the time of doing justices. If he kept silence, ye would not have had anything to do, but to the strengthened pillars he crieth. He crieth what? Verse 4. I have said to unjust men, Do not unjustly. He crieth, my brethren, truly ye cry, he delighteth you, hear ye him crying. By himself, I pray, let that voice terrify you. These voices of yours ought not so much to delight us, as those to terrify you. I have said to unjust men, do not unjustly. But already they have done, and they are guilty. Already there have flowed down the earth, and all that dwell therein. Pricked to the heart were they that crucified Christ. They acknowledged their sin, they learned something of the apostle, that they might not despair of the pardon of the preacher. For as the physician he had come, and therefore had not come to the whole. For there is no need, he saith, to the whole of a physician, but to them that are sick. I have not come to call righteous men, but sinners to repentance. Therefore I have said to unjust men, do not unjustly. They heard not, for of old to us it was spoken. We heard not, we fell, were made mortal, were begotten mortal. The earth flowed down. Let them hear the physician even now, in order that they may rise, him that came to the sick man, him whom they would not hear when whole, in order that they might not fall. Let them hear when lying down, in order that they may rise. I have said to the unjust, do not unjustly. How must we act? We have already done. And to the delinquents, do not exalt your horn. What is this? If ye have done iniquity through lust, do not defend it by being lifted up. Confess if ye have done it. For he that confesseth not and is unjust doth exalt the horn. I have said to unjust men, do not unjustly, and to the delinquent, do not exalt your horn. There shall be exalted in you the horn of Christ, if your horn be not exalted. Your horn is of iniquity, the horn of Christ is of majesty. Verse 5. Be not therefore lifted up, speak not iniquity against God. Hear ye now the voices of many, let each one hear, let him be pricked. What are men wont to say? Doth God truly judge concerning things human? And is this a judgment of God? Or doth he indeed care for what is being done on the earth? So many unjust men do overflow with prosperity, innocent men are weighed down with toils. For to one hath chanced something of ill, by God's reproof and admonition, and he knoweth his conscience, knoweth that for his sins' deserts he may suffer somewhat. Whence doth he dispute against God? Because he is not able to say, A just man am I. What do we suppose that he saith? There are worse unrighteous men, and yet these things they suffer not. This is the iniquity which men speak against God. But observe how unjust it is. While he willeth himself to seem a just man, him he maketh unjust. For he that saith, Unjustly I suffer that which I suffer, doth make him unjust, by whose judgment he is suffering, but himself just, who is suffering unjustly. I ask you, brethren of mine, is this just, that God be believed to be unjust, thou just? But when thou art saying these words, thou art speaking against God, iniquity. What saith he in another psalm? These things thou hast done, having enumerated certain sins. These things thou hast done, he saith, and was silent. What is, I was silent? He is never silent with commandment, but meanwhile he is silent with punishment. He is keeping still from vengeance. He doth not pronounce sentence against the condemned. But this man saith thus, I have done such and such things, and God hath not taken vengeance. Behold, I am whole, naught of ill hath befallen me. These things thou hast done, and I was silent. Thou hast suspected iniquity, that I shall be like unto thee. What is, that I shall be like unto thee? Because thou art unjust, even me thou hast deemed unjust, as though an approver of thy misdeeds, and no adversary, no avenger thereof. And what afterward saith he to thee? I will convict thee, and will set thee before thine own face. What is this? Because now by sinning, behind thy back thou settest thyself, seest not thyself, examinest not thyself. I will set thee before thyself, and will bring upon thee punishment from thyself. So also here. Speak not iniquity against God. Attend. Many men speak this iniquity, but dare not openly, lest as blasphemers they be abhorred by godly men. In their heart they gnaw upon these things, within they feed upon such impious food. It delighteth them to speak against God, and if they break not out with tongue, in heart they are not silent. Whence in another psalm is said, The fool hath said in his heart, There is no God. The fool hath said, but he hath feared men. He would not say it where men might hear, and he said it in that place where he might himself hear concerning whom he said it. Therefore here also in this psalm, dearly beloved, attend, whereas that which he said, Do not speak iniquity against God, this he saw many men do in heart, he hath also added. Verse 6. For neither from east, nor from west, nor from the deserts of the mountains. Verse 7. For God is judge. Of thine iniquities God is judge. If God He is, everywhere He is present, whither wilt thou take thyself away from the eyes of God, so that in some quarter thou mayest speak that which He may not hear? If from the east God judgeth, withdraw into the west, and say what thou wilt against God. If from the west, go into the east, and there speak. If from the deserts of the mountains he judgeth, go into the midst of the peoples, where thou mayest murmur to thyself. From no place judgeth he that everywhere is secret, everywhere open. Whom it is allowed no one to know as he is, and whom no one is permitted not to know. Take heed what thou doest. Thou art speaking iniquity against God. The Spirit of the Lord hath filled the round world. Another scripture saith this, And that which containeth all things hath knowledge of the voice, wherefore he that speaketh unjust things cannot be hid. Do not therefore think God to be in places. He is with thee such an one as thou shalt have been. What is such an one as thou shalt have been? Good if thou shalt have been good, and evil to thee he will seem, if evil thou shalt have been. But a helper, if good thou shalt have been, an avenger, if evil thou shalt have been. There thou hast a judge in thy secret place. Willing to do something of evil, from the public thou retirest into thy house, where no enemy may see. From those places of thine house, which are open and before the eyes of men, thou removest thyself into a chamber. Thou fearest even in thy chamber some witness from some other quarter. Thou retirest into thy heart, where thou meditatest. He is more inward than thy heart. Whithersoever therefore thou shalt have fled, there he is. From thyself whither wilt thou flee? Wilt thou not follow thyself whithersoever thou shalt flee? But since there is one more inward even than thyself, there is no place whither thou mayest flee from God angry, but to God reconciled. There is no place at all whither thou mayest flee. Wilt thou flee from Him? Flee to Him. Therefore speak not iniquity against God, even there where ye speak. Iniquity, he saith, he hath meditated in his bed. What is, he hath meditated in his bed? The bed, calling his heart, sacrifice the sacrifice of justice, and hope in the Lord. But above he said, Say ye in your hearts, and in your beds be pricked. However many prickings of evil deeds thou hast there, so many prickings of confession have thou there. Where then thou speakest iniquity against God, there he judgeth thee. He doth not defer judgment, but punishment. Now he judgeth, now he knoweth, now he seeth. Punishment remaineth. When it shall have been set before thee, thou wilt have the punishment also. When there shall have appeared the face of that man, who was here derided, who was judged, who was crucified, who stood before a judge, when he shall have appeared judging in his own presence, then thou shalt have punishment, if thou shalt not have amended thyself. What then shall we do now? Let us come before his face and exomologesi, come before in confession. He shall come gentle whom thou hast made angry. Neither from the deserts of the mountains, for God is judge. Not from the east, not from the west, not from the deserts of the mountains. Wherefore? For God is judge. If in any place he were, he would not be God. But because God is judge, not man, do not expect him out of places. His place thou wilt be, if thou art good, if after having confessed thou shalt have invoked him. Verse 7. One he humbleth, and another he exalteth. Whom humbleth? Whom exalteth this judge? Observe these two men in the temple, and ye see whom he humbleth and whom he exalteth. They went up into the temple to pray, he saith, the one a Pharisee, and the other a publican. The Pharisee said, Thanks to thee I render, that I am not like the rest of men, unjust, robbers, adulterers, as even this publican. I fast twice in the week, tithes I give of all things whatsoever I possess. To the physician he had gone up, and was showing whole limbs, he was hiding the wounds. What therefore said he, who knew best what he had to be healed of? But the publican was standing afar off, and was smiting his breast. Ye see him standing afar off. To him he was drawing near, whom he was invoking. And he was smiting his breast, saying, O God, be thou merciful to me a sinner. Verily I say unto you, that publican went down justified more than that Pharisee. For every one that exalteth himself shall be humbled, and he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. Thus hath been explained a verse of this psalm. God the judge doth what? One he humbleth, and another he exalteth. He humbleth the proud, and exalteth the humble. Verse 8. For the cup in the hand of the Lord of pure wine is full of mixed. Justly so. And he hath poured out of this upon this man, nevertheless the dreg thereof hath not been emptied. There shall drink all the sinners of the earth. Let us be somewhat recruited. There is here some obscurity, as we have heard in a very recent lesson in the Gospel. Ask, and it shall be given unto you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. But thou sayest, At what am I to knock, in order that it may be opened unto me? Neither from east nor from west, neither from the deserts of the mountains, for God is judge. If present he is in this place and in that, and absent nowhere, where thou art standing, there knock. There only stand, for by standing thou dost knock. What then is this? The first question that meeteth us is this. Of pure wine it is full of mixed. How of pure, if of mixed? But when he saith, the cup in the hand of the Lord, to men instructed in the church of Christ I am speaking. Ye ought not indeed to paint in your heart God, as it were circumscribed with a human form, lest, though the temples are shut up, ye forge images in your hearts. This cup therefore doth signify something. We will find out this. But in the hand of the Lord is in the power of the Lord. For the hand of God is spoken of for the power of God. For even if in reference to men oft times is said, In hand he hath it, that is, in his power he hath it, when he chooseth he doth it. Of pure wine it is full of mixed. In continuation he hath himself explained. He hath inclined, he saith, from this unto this man, nevertheless the dreg thereof hath not been emptied. Behold how it was full of mixed wine. Let it not therefore terrify you that it is both pure and mixed. Pure, because of the genuineness thereof; mixed, because of the dreg. What then in that place is the wine, and what the dreg? And what is, He hath inclined from this unto this man, in such sort that the dreg thereof was not emptied? Call ye to mind from whence he came to this. One he humbleth, and another he exalteth. That which was figured to us in the Gospel through two men, a Pharisee and a publican, this let us, taking in a wider sense, understand of two peoples, of Jews and of Gentiles. The people of the Jews that Pharisee was, the people of the Gentiles that publican. The people of the Jews were boasting of their merits, the Gentiles were confessing their sins. He that knoweth in the holy writings both the apostolical epistles and the Acts of the Apostles seeth there what I say. Not to make it long, it is just as the Apostles were exhorting the Gentiles not to despair, because they had lain in great sins, and were restraining the Jews from exalting themselves by the justifications, as it were, of the law, and from supposing themselves to be on this account just, but the Gentiles to be sinners, because the Jews had the law, and had the temple, and had the priesthood. But all those worshippers of the idols, venerators of demons, were set afar off, just as that publican was standing at a distance. As those by being proud have withdrawn, so these by confessing have drawn near. The cup therefore full of pure wine in the hand of the Lord, as far as the Lord giveth me to understand. For there may be some other who may give a better interpretation, because the obscurity of the Scriptures is such that it is a difficult thing for them to produce but one interpretation. Nevertheless, whatever interpretation shall have been disclosed, it must needs accord with the rule of faith. We neither envy our elders, nor, little as we are, do we despair. What seemeth good to us I am telling your love, not that I may stop up your ears against others, who will perchance say something better. The cup of pure wine full of the mixed seemeth to me to be the law, which was given to the Jews, and all that Scripture of the Old Testament, as it is called. There are the weights of all manner of sentences. For therein the New Testament lieth concealed, as though in the dreg of corporal sacraments. The circumcision of the flesh is a thing of great mystery, and there is understood from thence the circumcision of the heart. The temple of Jerusalem is a thing of great mystery, and there is understood from it the body of the Lord. The land of promise is understood to be the kingdom of heaven. The sacrifice of victims and of beasts hath a great mystery, but in all those kinds of sacrifices is understood that one sacrifice and only victim of the cross, the Lord, instead of all which sacrifices we have one. Because even those figured these, that is, with those these were figured. That people received the law, they received commandments just and good. What is so just as, Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not speak false testimony, honour thy father and mother, thou shalt not covet the property of thy neighbour, one God thou shalt adore, and him alone shalt thou serve. All these things belong to the wine. But those things carnal have as it were sunk down in order that they might remain with them, and there might be poured forth from thence all the spiritual understanding. But the cup in the hand of the Lord, that is, in the power of the Lord, of pure wine, that is, of the mere law, is full of mixed, that is together with the dreg of corporal sacraments. And because the one he humbleth, the proud Jew, and the other he exalteth, the confessing Gentile, he hath inclined from this unto this, that is, from the Jewish people unto the Gentile people. Hath inclined what? The law. There hath distilled from thence a spiritual sense. Nevertheless the dreg thereof hath not been emptied, for all the carnal sacraments have remained with the Jews. There shall drink all the sinners of the earth. Who shall drink? All the sinners of the earth. Who are the sinners of the earth? The Jews were indeed sinners, but proud. Again, the Gentiles were sinners, but humble. All sinners shall drink. But see, who the dreg, who the wine. For those by drinking the dreg have come to naught. These by drinking the wine have been justified. I would dare to speak of them even as inebriated, and I shall not fear. And oh that all ye were thus inebriated. Call to mind, thy cup inebriating, how passing beautiful. But why? Do ye think, my brethren, that all those who by confessing Christ even willed to die, were sober? So drunk they were, that they knew not their friends. All their kindred, who strove to divert them from the hope of heavenly rewards by earthly allurements, were not acknowledged, were not heard by them drunken. Were they not drunken, whose heart had been changed? Were they not drunken, whose mind had been alienated from this world? There shall drink, he saith, all the sinners of the earth. But who shall drink the wine? Sinners shall drink, but in order that they may not remain sinners, in order that they may be justified, in order that they may not be punished. Verse 9. But I, for all drink, but separately, I, that is, Christ with his body, for ever will rejoice, I will psalm to the God of Jacob, in that promise to be at the end, whereof is said, Corrupt not, but I for ever will rejoice. Verse 10. And all the horns of sinners I will break, and there shall be exalted the horns of the just. This is, the one he humbleth, the other he exalteth. Sinners would not have their horns to be broken, which without doubt will be broken at the end. Thou wilt not have him then break them. Do thou today break them. For thou hast heard above, do not despise it. I have said to unjust men, do not unjustly, and to the delinquents, do not exalt the horn. When thou hast heard, do not exalt the horn, thou hast despised and hast exalted the horn. Thou shalt come to the end, where there shall come to pass, all the horns of sinners I will break, and there shall be exalted the horns of the just. The horns of sinners are the dignities of proud men. The horns of the just are the gifts of Christ. For by horns exaltations are understood. Thou hatest on earth earthly exaltation, in order that thou mayest have the heavenly. Thou lovest the earthly, he doth not admit thee to the heavenly. And unto confusion will belong thy horn which is broken, just as unto glory it will belong, if thy horn is exalted. Now therefore there is time for making choice, then there will not be. Thou wilt not say, I will be let go and will make choice. For there have preceded the words, I have said to the unjust. If I have not said, make ready an excuse, make ready a defence. But if I have said, seize first upon confession, lest thou come unto damnation. For then confession will be too late, and there will be no defence. End of Psalm 75. End of Expositions on the Book of Psalms, Volume 3, by St. Augustine of Hippo.